Johnny Talk Sports in with the Week 13 NFL predictions. Last week, I had a really strong Week 12 with one more game left in Week 12 between the Ravens and the Steelers. I picked the Steelers, so will I end Week 12 with a record of 12-4 or 11-5? Now, there's no Thursday Night Football this week for Week 13 because the Cowboys and the Ravens were originally scheduled to play Thursday night this week, but that's been postponed to Tuesday to give the Ravens more time to rest after their game this week against the Steelers. And the Washington football team, the Steelers, it is being moved back to Monday afternoon. The first of two games are to be played on Monday this upcoming week to give the Steelers more time to rest after their Wednesday game against the Ravens. So without further ado, let's get to my Week 13 NFL predictions. Now, the first matchup this week for Week 13, the Saints and the Falcons. Now, these two teams just played 2 weeks ago, and this was Taysom Hill's first start as an NFL quarterback. And he did really good running the football. And right now, the Saints haven't had to play anybody where they have had to have Taysom Hill throw the football. Now, what's going to happen when the Saints have to play the Chiefs on the 20th of December, or even let alone the Eagles next week? Because the Eagles' run defense didn't do half bad against the Seahawks this past week on Monday Night Football. So the key here for the Falcons, if they want to win this game, they have to force Taysom Hill to throw the football. If you can force Taysom Hill to throw the football, I like your chances in this. Because Taysom Hill mainly beat the Falcons a couple weeks ago on the ground. And Taysom Hill has done most of his damage on the ground. In the end, though, I think the Saints are going to win this in dominating fashion. Now, the Falcons, they're coming off of a dominant win against the Raiders last week, which was ultimately what I think is the best the Falcons have played since the 2016 NFC Championship game. I think it's been that long since the Falcons have played a good game from start to finish. And with that, the Falcons, they probably think that they're just this good team, that they're somehow still in the playoff hunt, even though their season looked dead in the water just 4 weeks ago, or even 5 weeks ago. But I'm going to pick the Saints. The Falcons are just going to get a dose of reality this week, and the Saints will dominate this one with Taysom Hill doing his damage on the ground again. And if they can contain the run, though, not only with Taysom Hill, but Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara has struggled in these last couple of weeks statistically. So if they can contain that run, if Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, Taysom Hill, force Taysom Hill to win it through the air, the Falcons, I'd say they have a relatively good chance despite being one of the worst pass defenses in the league. But I'm going to still pick New Orleans. Next, we have the Lions and the Bears, and both these teams have struggled all season long. Although with the Bears, I was one of the people that fell into the hype of the Bears after their great start to the season, and it seemed like once they turned to Nick Foles, it just seemed like there was almost no stopping the Bears. But reality came in, and now the Bears, they are on this unbelievable losing streak at this point. And to tell you the truth, I think it's just going to go from bad to worse for the Bears. Maybe the bright side for the Bears is they're playing the Lions this week. While the Lions, they have one of the worst total defenses in the league. However, the Bears, they're not good running the football. They are last in the NFL in rush offense. And they are one of the worst offenses in the league, if not the worst. And Matt Nagy, he gave the play calling assignments to the Bears offensive coordinator. And it just doesn't seem like the Bears can get the ball moving. I mean, they moved the ball against the Packers in that fourth quarter, but that was against pretty much backups, and that was pretty much garbage time where the Packers knew they had the game won, so they just kind of eased back a little bit. And the last thing you want to hear if you're a Bears fan is that Kenny Golladay, he might be returned to the lineup this week after being in and out of the lineup all season long. I was anticipating that he would play in the Thanksgiving showdown against the Texans, but he did not. So I would say that Kenny Golladay could play this week. And if Kenny Golladay plays this week, that's kind of the last thing you want to hear. considering that the Bears, they really struggled against those Packers receivers last week of Adams and Lazard, and they really struggled. So I'm going to pick the Lions to win this game, and I think the Lions will get their redemption from week 1. In a game of the Lions, they should have won that game, but they ultimately blew it in the fourth quarter. So I'm picking Detroit to bounce back from that week 1 loss to beat the Bears this time around. Next, we have the Browns and the Titans, and this, to me, is one of, if not the best matchup of the week this week. You've got two offenses here. Well, in particular, run offenses. Some of the best in the league. The Browns are first in the NFL in rush offense, while the Titans are third. Only team between them is the Ravens, which would make sense because they mainly run the football with Ingram and Dobbins and Lamar Jackson. But this is going to be a great matchup. The one thing that's sticking out to me in this matchup is which team can run the football the best. And could the Titans, could they be on another late season charge to get into the playoffs just like last year when they were carried by Derrick Henry? And last week with 3 touchdowns against one of the better defenses in the National Football League, in the Colts, to really move the ball at will on that Colts defense. I think it's signs that Derrick Henry is going to be carrying the Titans throughout the rest of this season. And the Browns, ever since Nick Chubb returned from the IR, the Browns' run game has just looked unstoppable, especially with Chubb and Kareem Hunt being a 1-2 punch. Now, the winner of this game is going to be the team that runs the football the best. And right now, I would say it's going to be the Titans. And even if it doesn't come down to the run, even if it comes down through which quarterback throws the football the best, I would have to place my bet on Ryan Tannehill, because Ryan Tannehill has the weapons on offense that I think are better than the weapons that Baker Mayfield has, especially with Odell Beckham. Ever since Odell Beckham suffered a season-ending ACL injury, the Browns have been carried by their running game and by their defense led by Myles Garrett. So I think the Titans will win behind another stellar performance by Derrick Henry. Next, we have the Bengals and the Dolphins. The Bengals playing without Joe Burrow. Last week against the Giants, the Bengals just did not look good at all. They made the Giants look like a team that could make a late season charge for the playoffs, although it does make sense considering the Giants are in the NFC East. While the Dolphins, the Dolphins. I didn't really expect the Dolphins to be this good this season, especially with them not turning the ball over to Tua Tagovailoa until about the midpoint of the season. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, he stepped in for the injured Tua. And I would anticipate Tua being the starting quarterback again this week, unless they feel like Ryan Fitzpatrick earned that starting job. I'm not sure yet if it's been announced who's going to start at quarterback for the Dolphins, or if it is Tua or Ryan Fitzpatrick. But I would lean towards it being Tua. But I'm going to pick the Dolphins to win. And it's kind of a shame that we couldn't see Joe Burrow and Tua go at it. Because we saw him go at it last season. Well, we saw him 2 seasons ago as well. But that was before LSU's offense. It really made that next jump as far as college football offense is concerned. So I'm bummed we aren't going to get to see Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa go at it in a quarterback battle. But even if Joe Burrow was playing this game, I would pick the Dolphins, because the Dolphins, they've looked like a much more superior team compared to the Bengals this season. Because the Dolphins, they've got some cooking with Brian Flores as the head coach. Next, we have the Jaguars and the Vikings. The Vikings, they picked up a come-from-behind win against the Panthers with the game-winning touchdown by Chad Beebe, who redeemed himself after muffing a punt to give them a chance to tie the game on. But the Vikings defense held the Panthers to a field goal opportunity, and that ultimately led to redemption for Chad Beebe. Game-winning touchdown. While the Jaguars, they knew a quarterback. Mike Lennon stepped in last week, came close to beating the Browns, and the Jaguars, they fired their GM after Sunday's game against the Browns. Now, the Jaguars, they are on a 10-game losing streak. They haven't won since the opener. They're on 10 or 11 game losing streak. Either way, they're in that race for the number 1 overall pick. The Jaguars haven't looked good since the season opener. I'm going to pick the Vikings because the Jaguars, they struggled against the run last week with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And last thing you want when you're struggling, coming off of a game where you're struggling against the run, is to face the second leading rusher in the NFL, only behind Derrick Henry. That's literally the last thing you want to see. So I'm going to pick the Vikings. The Vikings, they're still in the playoff hunt. They kept their playoff hopes alive last week against the Panthers. So I think the Vikings will win this again this week. The Vikings, they're not a team to mess with. I doubt the Vikings this season, but at this point, the Vikings aren't a team to mess with. So I'm going with Minnesota. Next, we've got the Raiders and the Jets. And this one this is one of the ones where I feel like I have to pick someone. The Raiders just completely looked abysmal against the Falcons last week, 43-6. While the Jets, they haven't performed well all season, although they did come close to winning a game against the Patriots on Monday Night Football. So the Jets are looking for their first win of the season, while the Raiders, they're looking to really bounce back after their worst performance of the season against the Falcons. Although I will say this, though. This one does kind of feel self-explanatory. I am going to pick the Raiders in this, but if the Jets were to win one game this season, I think this game would be the game. Considering that Josh Jacobs is a little banged up, but he is expected to play this week, and with Derek Carr coming off of his worst performance of the season, I think maybe that loss is still stuck in their heads. That could have been a season breaker for them, especially when the week before that, they came close to upsetting the Chiefs again for a second time. While the Jets, they have nothing to lose at this point, while the Raiders have everything to lose. They are still in the playoff hunt. If they could just take care of business, they could possibly get into a wild card position. So the Raiders, they got everything to lose this week. The Jets, they really got nothing to lose, except for ground in the race for Trevor Lawrence, but that's about all they can lose at this point. So if the Jets were to win a game this year, it'd be this week. But I think Las Vegas will be victorious in this game. Next, we have got the Colts and the Texans. And the Colts gave up 3 rushing touchdowns to Derrick Henry last week. The good news is the Texans, they're 31st in the league in run offense. That's good for the Colts. They don't have to face a dynamic running back this week. And even better news for the Colts is that the Texans, big news this week from the Texans organization, as it is announced that Will Fuller, the star wide receiver and the top target for quarterback Deshaun Watson, suspended for the next 6 games for violating PED use. So Will Fuller is suspended for week 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, and the season opener in 2021. So that is a huge loss for the Texans. Just when you think the Texans, they looked great on Thanksgiving, it was anticipated what the rest of the season could look like for Deshaun Watson, as it could have been an audition tape for Eric Bieniemy to become the head coach of the Texans. Out for the next 6 games by suspension. And to make matters worse, the top corner for the Texans, Bradley Roby, suspended for 6 games as well for violating the use of PEDs. So those are some. So if you're the Colts in this one, you're pretty much playing with house money going into this game, because you don't have to necessarily worry about a dynamic running back this week. As the Texans, they are second to last in the league in rush offense. You've got the star wide receiver for the Texans suspended, and you got the top corner for the Texans suspended. So those are 3 accolades that the Colts have in this game. And you might possibly have Jonathan Taylor coming back this week to be activated again. And you have a dynamic running package of Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines, and Jordan Wilkins. And you also have Jacoby Brissett, who can come in short yardage situations. So the Colts, this should be one of those games of the Colts. They should win this one. And I'm picking the Colts to win this one. I just feel like there's just too much going on with the Texans to kind of keep up with the Colts at this point, because the Colts, they're going to come out with a chip on their shoulder after being embarrassed last week. So I'm thinking maybe Michael Pittman has a bounce back game. He did get targeted 9 times last week, but only came down with 2 catches. But I'm picking the Colts in this one. Maybe Michael Pittman has a bounce back game after being the reason why I lost one of my fantasy matches this week. But we'll see. I'm picking Indianapolis to win this one. Next, we have the Rams and the Cardinals. The Rams, very close loss to the 49ers. They lost the 49ers earlier this year as well, but this one was a lot closer. And for the Cardinals, well, actually the thing that these two teams have in common, other than the fact that they're both in the NFC West and that they're both in playoff contention, is that they're both coming off of game-winning field goal losses. And what's going to be interesting about this matchup is how DeAndre Hopkins is going to do against Jalen Ramsey. That's going to be the matchup to look out for. I feel like even if Jalen Ramsey, if he covers DeAndre Hopkins really well in this game, it's going to open the door for maybe a Christian Kirk to put up a big game for this Cardinals pass offense. And the Rams, they did contain Russell Wilson. I feel like they contained Russell Wilson very well a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to pick the Cardinals in this one. I think this game goes either way. I think you can literally flip a coin for this game, but I'm going to pick Arizona. Next, we have the Giants and the Seahawks. The Seahawks coming off of another good performance defensively on Monday Night Football against the Eagles. And another opportunity for the Seahawks defense to do well this week. Another opportunity. While Daniel Jones is expected to miss time with a hamstring injury, it just seems like things just go from bad to worse for the Giants. It seems like every time we see the Giants, they show some heart or they have some hope, just something bad happens. I mean, week 1, after they played the Pittsburgh Steelers pretty decently well on Monday Night Football, Saquon Barkley suffers a seasoning injury the very next week. And the Giants are on a 3-game winning streak. But Daniel Jones is expected to miss the time of the hamstring injury. So the Giants are going to be turning to Colt McCoy, one of the greatest college football quarterbacks of all time, but unfortunately never really panned out in the NFL. That's kind of what happens when you get drafted by the Browns. But maybe this is a redemption opportunity for him. Although it is just hard to pick against the Seahawks at this point, because the Seahawks, I feel like they're looking much better. I feel like defensively, they're getting better over these last couple of weeks. So I'm going to pick Seattle in this one. And I think Russell Wilson, I think he has a big game against this Giants secondary. Lockett and Metcalf probably a touchdown apiece. And plus with Chris Carson back in the lineup this week, well, when he came back this past week, and I think they're going to give Chris Carson the majority of the carries this week because we saw Carlos Hyde get quite a bit of carries on Monday Night Football as well against the Eagles. So I'm taking Seattle. I just feel like there's much success that's happening in Seattle right now, which I think could end up becoming one of those unbelievable playoff runs where maybe we think that the Seahawks, well, defensively they're not doing well, but they're getting better the later on the season goes. It's almost kind of like the Chiefs from these last 2 seasons. The Chiefs defense doesn't look that good in the regular season, but the later on it gets into the season, the better the defense becomes. And kind of like the Falcons 2016. Their defense didn't look good throughout most of the regular season, but the later on the season went, the better the defense got. So I'm picking Seattle. Next we have the Eagles and the Packers. For the Eagles, is it time to start Jalen Hurts? Because Carson Wentz has really struggled throughout this season. In fact, he has struggled ever since his ACL injury. Now, part of that could be because the Eagles have used about 10 or 11 different offensive line combinations this season, which is the most in the league. Or it could be that they don't have the full weapons on offense. But the Eagles, though, I'm thinking this could be a season where the Eagles, they fire Doug Peterson at the end of the season if something doesn't change quick. Like if the Eagles were to miss the playoffs, I could see them moving on from Doug Peterson. I really could. And really the Eagles, they have just whiffed on pretty much in the last 2 years. They drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who hasn't done anything in this Seahawks passing game. And they have, and then over DK Metcalf, did they draft J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf. And last year, this past draft, they drafted Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, who went to the Vikings. Now, I kind of believe the Eagles, they kind of wanted CeeDee Lamb too, but the Cowboys, they beat them to it. And for the Packers, well, we saw how dominant the Packers can look, especially after a loss. And right now, the Packers, I think it's full speed ahead, because once that calendar turns late November, early December, the Packers are one of those teams. And Aaron Rodgers is one of those quarterbacks that turns it up to another level. And I think this is going to be no different. I think the Packers win this game big. I think that the Eagles are going to struggle so bad in this game that Jalen Hurts, he may be the starter next week, and they could be moving on from Carson Wentz at the end of the season. Although, to me personally, I feel like Carson Wentz should at least get one more season under his belt, because part of the reason why he's struggling could be because of that offensive line for the Eagles. As I said a moment ago, 10 or 11 different offensive line combinations, the most in the league. I feel like he's got to at least come back for 2021 to prove himself. Maybe draft an offensive lineman round 1. But I'm picking Green Bay. Next, we've got the Patriots and the Chargers. Patriots game-winning field goal last week against the Cardinals to pull off the upset, while the Chargers, things are looking a little bit better for the Chargers. A bit more positivity going on. The Chargers, they lost their first double-digit game of the season. So, let's see here. With the Chargers, Austin Eckler is back in the lineup. And Austin Eckler, he had a dominant performance statistically. He came up just short of the end zone a couple of times in the game against Buffalo. And I feel like that if Justin Herbert doesn't throw the interception, I feel like the Chargers, they make the game a lot closer. Maybe the Chargers could have stolen that win. But the Chargers, they look a very competitive team. I feel like the Chargers, I think they've got a bright future ahead of them. I'm just not sure if the future is going to involve Anthony Lynn being the head coach. While the Patriots, well, their playoff hopes are still alive. And I think it's going to stay that way. With Austin Eckler coming back into the lineup, I feel like this Patriots defense is going to shut down Keenan Allen, and they're going to shut down Mike Williams. So I think this Patriots team, I think they're going to win this game. Although the Chargers, they've got some talent on offense, so maybe the Chargers offense will keep them in the game. Although the Chargers defense has not, they haven't really met expectations, not even close. I mean, the Chargers, I thought they were going to have one of the better defenses in the league, but it's mediocre at best. But maybe, since the Patriots are struggling offensively this season, maybe the Chargers are going to have a game this week where their defense looks like one of the better defenses in the league. But I think the Patriots will still win. Probably one of those close-scoring games again that the Patriots experienced last week. Probably a 20-17 final score. Although, I'm thinking maybe it could be a little bit higher than that, because Justin Herbert, I think he's capable of getting at least maybe 24 points on the board against the Patriots this week. But either way, I'm picking New England. Next, we have Sunday Night Football between the Broncos and the Chiefs. And to tell you the truth, this one seems pretty self-explanatory. The Broncos, last week, they were going into that game with a wide receiver from the practice squad at quarterback, as all the Broncos quarterbacks were ineligible to play last week. And now they are being activated off the IR. But it doesn't matter really who is going to be at quarterback. I think the Chiefs win either way. Last week, the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill really bullied that Buccaneers secondary. And I think he's going to bully the Broncos secondary again this week. So I expect Tyreek Hill to have another big game. I think the Chiefs are going to win this game pretty convincingly. Patrick Mahomes probably throws for over 400 yards in this game, as I will pick Kansas City. Pretty self-explanatory of a game. Next, we have the Washington football team against the Steelers. And for this one, I will say this. I think the Steelers will win this game. However, I feel like with the extra rest, I think maybe the football team of Washington, they can benefit from this. Because the Washington football team, they last played on Thanksgiving. So from Thanksgiving Day all the way to Monday afternoon, that's going to be quite a bit of rest that they're getting compared to the Steelers. You get much more time to prepare for the Steelers. You get to really watch a Steelers game against the Ravens really from the couch. So that's going to benefit not only the coaches, but it's also going to benefit the players watching it on TV. And the Steelers, they kind of struggled with the run against the Ravens in their toughest matchup of the season. And when you have a team with a solid 1-2 punch in Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic and even Peyton Barber as a really good third-string running back, I think this Washington run game could keep the football team in this game and assert the running game to melt the clock to keep the Steelers offense on the sidelines with the speed of Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool. I think this is going to be a much closer game than what the experts think. I'm picking the Steelers, but I think this game is going to be very close. I'm going to say by 7 points. Next, we have the Monday Night Football game between the Bills and the 49ers. The 49ers are coming off an emotional win against the Rams. And the Bills, they're coming off a big win against the Chargers. Josh Allen, really playing an MVP type of season. He's having an MVP type season. But I think right now probably Patrick Mahomes is the favorite at this point, as Mahomes is leading the league in passing yards. Now for this game, I anticipate the 49ers probably putting up a significant amount of points on the board. I could see it happening. I could see this game being actually a shootout, believe it or not, despite the 49ers going with having Nick Mullins at quarterback compared to Josh Allen. Because this 49ers defense, it isn't too bad, despite all these injuries. And I argue that if the 49ers didn't have all these injuries, I think the 49ers, I think they would be leading the NFC West. I think this 49ers team is that good of a team with their team completely healthy. I mean, I know it's the Super Bowl hangover probably, but you've got to account for some of the injuries they've had, like Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas, and almost every single running back in the 49ers has been on the IR at some point this season. At least it feels that way. While for the Bills, I think Stephon Diggs has a big game this week. I think the Bills, I think they win this game. I'm not sure how convincingly it's going to be, but I think the 49ers, I think they're going to stay in this game for most of the way through. But in the end, though, I'm going to pick Buffalo. And our final game in Week 13, the Cowboys and the Ravens. Now, what sticks out to me about this matchup is the running game for the Ravens. Now, here's the thing. The Ravens are second in the NFL in run offense, while they are one of the worst teams in the league in passing offense. That's mainly because the Ravens mainly run the football. That's where they do most of their damage. And Zeke Elliott for the Cowboys, he has been ineffective throughout this entire season. It's really unknown why. Is it because they're not having the play calling surrounding him running the football? Because Tony Pollard's looked better than Zeke Elliott this season throughout many points this year. Ever since Dak got hurt, I anticipated the Cowboys were going to be carried by Zeke, but that just isn't the case whatsoever. Now the Cowboys defense, they struggled on Thanksgiving against the against the Washington football team with Antonio Gibson and even J.D. McKissic and even Peyton Barber. So they struggled as a whole in that run defense. And I was going to originally say that if Lamar Jackson plays in this game, because Lamar Jackson is out for Wednesday's game against the Steelers, if Lamar Jackson plays the game, I'd pick the Ravens, and if he wasn't, then I'd pick the Cowboys. Now that I think of it, now that I saw the Cowboys defense struggle against the Washington football team in the run defense with Antonio Gibson, a rookie running back, I think no matter what happens, whether Lamar Jackson plays or not, I think the Ravens are going to win this game. Now, to me, this is what I feel like a must-win for the Cowboys to stay in the race to the NFC East. Even though it's the NFC East, I think I think there's at least one of those other three NFC East teams that they have a schedule at this point where they could probably finish the season at least 3-2, maybe 4-1. So I feel like this is a must-win for the Cowboys to keep their season alive and their playoff hopes alive. But even Lamar Jackson doesn't play, they do most of their damage in the running game with Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins, and even Gus Edwards as well. So I think with Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins being activated for Wednesday's game, I think they're going to win this game with or without Lamar Jackson. So those are my Week 13 NFL predictions. For review, I like the Saints, Lions, Titans, Dolphins, Vikings, Raiders, Colts, Cardinals, Seahawks, Packers, Patriots, Chiefs, Steelers, Bills, and Ravens this week. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time.